Okay, so hey guys and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Serhii Bohachuk versus Mykal Fox fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like video if you do indeed like video, and let's get straight into it. So this is the return of Bohachuk, and Bohachuk is fighting another, contender, somebody in Mykal Fox who has fought at a kind of fringe world level. He's kind of been a bit of a gatekeeper in recent times. I mean, he fought against Miastri for a, from what I believe, interim world title fight, and that was down at the welterweight division. But he lost that one relatively controversially. But since then he's not really been able to reach them same heights. He went and lost again afterwards, and then more recently he fought Ergashev and lost. And Ergashev is a world level type of fighter, but he's not obviously a world champion, and he had his opportunity to become a world champion against Matthias, but obviously he lost that one. So Fox has been, like I say, that fringe kind of gatekeeper world level type fighter. For Bohachuk, is that a fight that I really want this? Not really, because I think, like I say, he's just kind of had that with Ishmael Davis. Yes, perhaps Ishmael Davis hasn't been able to reach the same heights as that of a Mykal Fox, but I still think that was a kind of tune-up warm-up fight that he realistically needed. And coming off the Ortiz fight before, he really had an excellent fight in that, and it was an absolute war. But then, he was meant to fight Madrimov, and that didn't happen. Will that happen again? Possibly. Probably not. Maybe, but probably not, because Madrimov did lose more convincingly to Ortiz. And then, you're then expecting his career to progress on after the Davis fight, Bohachuk, but it didn't. Instead, he's now fighting Fox, who, yes, this maybe is a takeover fight. Maybe there isn't really too many options for who he's going to fight in the super welterweight division. It's definitely a division which has a lot moving around happening at the moment. So maybe, like I say, world title opportunities aren't really available, because we are waiting for Canelo versus Crawford, and whilst we're waiting for that fight, Crawford is currently holding a lot of the titles, and so it means that there isn't really going to be too many there isn't going to be too many world title fights, because, like I say, he does hold two of them, I believe, and then Fundora holds currently the other two, but he is vacating the, I believe, WBO to let Xander Zayas fight Jorge Perez, for it. So, there's a bit going on in the division. I think there is a few fights kind of tied up and involved. Tim Tszyu's going to be fighting for a title as well, obviously, against Fundora. So, like I said, there's a few things going on. It kind of means that somebody like Bohachuk is being perhaps pushed to the side. Like I say, due to the fact of Madrimov losing quite convincingly to Ortiz, I don't think that's going to happen at the moment. But also at the same time, I would love to see Ortiz rematch Bohachuk, but I'm just not entirely sure that unless his excellency comes in and gets involved, that realistically Ortiz is going to want to have that rematch again, because it is a big risk for a minimum type of reward fight. And so for this fight though, we can't underestimate Mykal Fox. Like I say, he has had his own level of success in times, and he when he fought Ergashev, it wasn't really the best of performances. He did lose quite badly, and something that he kept doing, which I wasn't really a massive fan of, was he just kept ducking his head down and just standing there with his head ducked down, his whole body just kind of ducking down, and then just getting forced to be stood back up again. And he just kept doing that over and over again. And Ergashev wasn't really doing anything too crazy. He was quite erotic in the way that he was just jumping in and out, and just erratic. I mean, not erotic. But yeah, like I say, it really wasn't anything too crazy what Ergashev was doing, but Fox just couldn't deal with it at all. And I think Fox perhaps is way past his best days realistically. He could prove me wrong, but like I say, we'll have to wait and see. He's a very rangy fighter who isn't really that physical, wants to get his long levers going. And to be fair, Bohachuk was having issues with Davis's longer punches, and especially the right, I believe, which was going and catching Bohachuk over his guard whenever he was throwing, because perhaps he wasn't really bringing his shots back as well, and it wasn't, he hasn't got crazy amounts of speed, Bohachuk. He is quite an awkward, difficult fighter to deal with, Bohachuk, but I think Fox won't be able to keep Bohachuk away. I think Bohachuk will just walk him down. Fox is willingly going to take the back foot like he has done in a lot of his fights. I don't think his jab and his rangy punches are going to do too much. And, in power wise, he definitely hasn't got crazy amounts of power. I mean, he hasn't got a knockout victory in a while. And I don't think he's ever knocked out an opponent at a high level when he has taken a step up. So, like I said, I don't really think there is a crazy amount of power there. When he has in previous fights, sat down on his punches and thrown, shots to the body and uppercuts and things like that. He does look good, but I just don't think he does it enough. I think Bohachuk, yes, again, he's not going to be throwing a jab too much, so he could definitely get caught coming in, but I think he can shorten up his shots so well. That's what really impressed me, especially in the Ortiz fight and the Davis fight. He was shortening up his shots so well, and he was also still creating that same level of power, which is so difficult to do. Very few fighters can realistically do it as well as Bohachuk was able to do, especially against Davis. Like the way that he got that first knockdown was just pretty brutal, to be honest. He threw a shot which was directly into Davis's midsection of his face, but it was thrown from such a short distance. It just, like I say, generated so much power. And I mean, Bahachuk's record in the way of knocking opponents out definitely does showcase his power as well, again with the 24 out of 25 fights ending in knockout victory. So again, I think that Bohachuk is going to be able to win pretty comfortably via knockout in round 4. Yes, Fox hasn't been stopped at a step up loss that he has taken, but at the same time, like I say, I think he is on the decline. I think if he is just going to be continuously clinching or trying to duck his head under, I think Bohachuk is going to be able to time him with a short shot and perhaps an uppercut and then just be able to knock him down, if not a hook, and just be able to knock him down from that. And I think it could be quite a brutal stoppage in which Bohachuk does deliver. Then who goes into fight next, like I've talked about, Ortiz again could be a great fight, and realistically Ortiz hasn't really got too much options wise available to him, so he is WBC interim champion. He probably is waiting around again for the Crawford fight for him to be elevated to full champion, which probably will end up happening, but inevitably Bohachuk, that rematch definitely could be there, and you know, perhaps that could be a Golden Boy main event, and maybe then he will do it. But I don't necessarily know if it will happen again. Hopefully, it will. But Ramos, that could be a good fight as well. I think that could be an all action, two guys just standing in front of each other, throwing loads of shots type of fight. Even a Keith Thurman, that could be a good fight. I mean, Thurman was meant to be fighting Zoo. Well, that kind of seemingly was going to happen after that Jarvis fight for Thurman. But at the same time now, Zoo's kind of gone on and picked Fundora, the rematch, and that with that instead, which I don't blame him because it's for a world title. But it leaves Thurman without much of kind of options. And realistically, I mean, I think Thurman would be happy to just not fight for a while. But perhaps a Bohachuk fight could be a good fight. Thurman has shown that he will just sit on the sidelines for a while and he can come back and still look really good. But a Bohachuk fight, I think, could be an entertaining fight still nonetheless. And then one other fight in which I want to talk about, which is on this card, is a world title fight, and that is Mizuki Hiruta versus Carla Merino for that of the WBO World Super Flyweight title. Somebody who I really like as a fighter is Mizuki Hiruta. I think she's a very talented fighter. I think when she's boxing early on in fights, she looks really good. Her movement looks excellent. She's, really calm, relaxed, and she seems like she knows exactly what she's doing. She's very coordinated. And then, she'll turn up the tempo, she'll turn up the pace. She's on a good run of stoppages. And like I say, when she plants her feet, she gets involved in a fight. She then can, really outdo her opponents with just the fact that she is sitting down on her punches. And I think she does have good power. And I think it is entertaining to watch her fight. And, she doesn't seem like she's on kind of face value that strong, that aggressive, that violent of a fighter when she is, I think some of her fights in Japan she fought with bows and, she has a bright pink hair and everything like that, but she is actually a really talented fighter who, like I say, has got that really good upper body strength about her and inevitably has been, like I say, getting good stoppages and is coming off, not a stoppage victory. It was a head clash leading to a technical unanimous decision, but she did cause her last opponent, in which was her American debut, some issues, and definitely did seem to rock her a few times and inevitably did win convincingly in that fight. And she's in against Merino, who is a highly ranked Argentinian fighter who has been getting some decent stoppages herself, is coming off back-to-back stoppage wins, but they aren't too crazy. You know, her last one was, from what I believe, was the corner throwing in the towel, and the one before was, you know, a decent shot she landed, but her opponent was able to get back up, and you know, the ref just didn't want to see her carry on fighting. So she isn't a bad fighter, Merino. She moves with her punches well. She'll throw and, like I say, move around, circle around. I think Hiruta, if she just stands and trades against Merino, she could have a few issues because, you know, Merino does have a solid level of power there and will be willing to trade. But I do think that Hiruta has that more so hand speed and that more so combinations in which she'll throw, and that could lead on to victory, in which I do think she will be able to get, where she'll be able to win by unanimous decision. Like I say, Merino, I don't think is a bad fighter at all, and for sure definitely could cause her some problems. I would like to see Hiruta, you know, in some of her performances, like I say, she's really good when she is boxing on the outside and picking her punches and moving well. Perhaps she can sometimes get drawn into a fight a bit too soon and turn it up a bit too soon. And, you know, it's entertaining, but it means she is definitely getting hit more. Perhaps if she has a couple more rounds where she is, you know, just boxing and, like I say, using her movement, then she could really have, you know, some real success in the early to mid rounds, and then continuously just wear down Marina to where, you know, if she does get involved in the firefight Haruta, she can afford to do so because Marina might not have that much left, you know, moving around for so long. She might not be used to having to do that because a lot of Marina's opponents are just fighters who just will walk towards you very, you know, lazily, clumsily, and get caught walking onto shots. But I don't think, you know, Hiruta is somebody who will do that. She can outbox, and like I said, I think she'll be able to use her skill set to be able to win via unanimous decision. Then who she can go on to fight next? I mean, something like a Ruiz or a Cruz, two American fighters, perhaps that could happen. The super flyweight division is in not the best of conditions at the moment. I mean, Garcia could be a good fighter. Emma Garcia, Mexican IBF champion. There's a couple of Mexican champions, you know, nothing too crazy. They don't really seemingly want to be fighting anybody of too big a name. Perhaps Hiruta could get involved with most valuable promotions and then, you know, do something with them and then force a world championship fight from there, force one of the Mexican fighters to get paid well enough to want to go on to fight Hiruta. That could happen and that could be entertaining. You know, Hiruta seemingly is signed with 360 Boxing Promotions, but they might be willing to work with most valuable promotions as well. But you know, we'll have to wait and see. Perhaps there could be some options there. Ginny Fuchs is another name in which I don't have a clue what she's going to be doing next because, you know, she hasn't fought since the win versus Ruiz, which was a split decision. But she is a good Olympic name and she is 4-0 and she has been progressing very quickly. And she was seemingly with Matchroom, but again, that's another career in which I have no idea what's happening because she hasn't fought in a while. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Again, you know, she could be another name that could be signed with most valuable promotions. I think they're doing really good things with women's boxing at the moment. So, you know, I think there is a lot of fringe kind of names that aren't getting the recognition that they're deserved as world champions, and I think Hiruta is definitely one of them, and she has the makings to be a star, and you know, hopefully she'll get picked up or at least, you know, promoted that bit more by 360 boxing promotions to be, you know, really pushed as the star, which she definitely is. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, need like video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.